Hi, I'm Lila. I'm 24, and I've always been in love with the way Americans speak. The rhythm, the confidence, the smooth flow of their words. But every time I opened my mouth, I felt like I didn't belong. My accent was thick, and people would sometimes ask me to repeat myself. I felt small, like my words didn't land the way I wanted. I wanted to sound natural, not perfect, just clear and confident like Native American speakers. I didn't want to change who I was. I just wanted my voice to be heard. Growing up in a multicultural neighborhood, I was exposed to various languages and dialects. While this enriched my understanding of cultures, it also made me acutely aware of my own accent when speaking English. In school, I often hesitated to participate in discussions, fearing that my pronunciation would be mocked or misunderstood. This self-consciousness carried into my adult life, affecting my confidence in job interviews and social gatherings. I remember attending a seminar where the speaker's American accent captivated the audience. The way she articulated her thoughts, with clarity and poise, left a lasting impression on me. It wasn't just about the accent, it was about the confidence and authority it conveyed. I realized that mastering the American accent could be a tool to boost my self-esteem and open new opportunities. Determined to make a change, I began researching methods to improve my pronunciation. I discovered that the American accent is characterized by specific features such as rhoticity, the pronunciation of the R sound in words like hard and car. This was different from the non-rhotic accents I was accustomed to, where the R is often silent. Understanding these nuances was the first step in my journey. I also learned about the importance of intonation and stress patterns in American English. For instance, the melody of a sentence can change its meaning entirely. Practicing these patterns helped me sound more natural and expressive. I started mimicking dialogues from American movies and TV shows, paying close attention to how actors delivered their lines. One technique that proved invaluable was shadowing, listening to a native speaker and repeating their words simultaneously. This exercise improved my rhythm and helped me internalize the flow of American English. I also recorded myself reading passages aloud, then compared my pronunciation to that of native speakers. This self-assessment allowed me to identify areas for improvement. Despite the progress, there were moments of frustration. Sometimes I would revert to old habits, especially when tired or nervous. But I reminded myself that change takes time and persistence. Each small victory, like correctly pronouncing a challenging word or receiving a compliment on my speech, motivated me to keep going. As I continued practicing, I noticed a shift in how others perceived me. Conversations became smoother, and I felt more included in discussions. The fear of speaking up diminished, replaced by a growing sense of confidence. I realized that mastering the American accent wasn't about losing my identity. It was about enhancing my communication skills and embracing a new facet of self-expression. This journey taught me that with dedication and the right strategies, it's possible to transform not just the way we speak, but also how we perceive ourselves. Didn't start with grammar books. I started with my ears. That might sound strange to some people. Shouldn't you begin with vocabulary lists? Flashcards? A textbook? That's what I thought at first, too. But then I remembered something powerful. Babies don't learn to speak from grammar books. They learn by listening. They hear voices all day, every day, before they even say a single word. And when they finally do speak, their speech reflects what they've been surrounded by. That's when it clicked. If I wanted to sound American, I had to listen like a baby does, with full attention, with curiosity, and with zero fear of mistakes. So, I started listening, really listening, to how Americans speak. At first, it was just background noise. I'd put on an episode of Friends while folding laundry or listen to Brooklyn Nine-Nine while I cooked. But soon, it became more intentional. I was no longer watching just to laugh. I was watching to learn. I wanted to catch the music in their voices. That's exactly what American English is. Musical. The rise and fall of pitch, the stretch of some words and the quick drop of others. I noticed how they didn't pronounce every word fully, and how certain sounds almost disappeared in fast speech. Gonna instead of going to. Wanna instead of want to. At first I thought it was lazy, but no, it was rhythm, it was efficiency, it was real. I began mimicking. I'd rewind short clips over and over and try to say the lines exactly the way they did. Tone, rhythm, pauses, even facial expressions. I wasn't just copying sounds, I was embodying a new voice. Sometimes I'd stand in front of a mirror and act like I was in the scene. It felt silly. I laughed at myself a lot. But every laugh was proof that I was enjoying the journey, and I practiced everywhere. On the bus, I had one earbud in and whispered new phrases under my breath. In the kitchen, I'd speak my actions out loud like I was narrating a cooking show. Now I'm chopping the onions. And oh, they're strong today. At night, I would lie in bed and go over conversations in my head, saying them in my best American accent. What amazed me was how much my ears had to do with my mouth. The EI. More I listened, the better I spoke. And the more I spoke, the more confident I became. I started to hear myself differently. And like a baby turning their first babble into real words, I could feel a transformation happening. But I won't lie. It was hard. There were times I couldn't catch what someone said in a video, even after listening 3 or 4 times. Some words just wouldn't sit right on my tongue. I'd twist my mouth to sound like them and still feel like I sounded robotic. There were moments when I wanted to give up and go back to my comfort zone, my old accent, my natural rhythm. Still, something deep inside me whispered, "Keep going." So I turned that struggle into a system. I made playlists of American podcasts and YouTube channels. I wrote down phrases I liked, not just what they said, but how they said it. Like when one character said, "Seriously?" with a rising pitch that made it sound both annoyed and hilarious. I practiced that word for a week, seriously, in different emotions. Surprised, angry, funny, disappointed, dramatic. My mouth moved faster, smoother. I wasn't just repeating words. I was becoming fluent in the sound. There was this one unforgettable week when I challenged myself to copy a scene from a show, word for word, emotion for emotion. I recorded it and compared my version to the original. The first time I played it back, I cringed so hard I almost deleted it. But I didn't. I saved it. I told myself, "This is where you started. Now let's see where you'll be in a month." That recording became my motivation. I started noticing patterns. Americans don't just say words, they deliver them. They use tone, timing, and body language. The sentence, "What are you doing?" could sound annoyed, curious, excited, or flirtatious, depending on the tone. So I made tone my next focus. I would say simple lines like "really?" or "I didn't know that" in 10 different tones. I wasn't just learning the language anymore. I was becoming a performer of it. Every day, I gave myself a new voice challenge. Monday, work on the R sound. Tuesday, practice linking words. Wednesday, repeat one scene 5 times until it felt natural. Slowly, the fear disappeared. In its place came joy. Learning to speak in an American accent was no longer a goal. It had become a game. The more I played, the more I improved. There's something magical about repetition. You don't notice progress daily, but then one day, you catch yourself talking to someone and you realize, wait a minute, I sound different, not forced, not fake, just fluid. One of my proudest moments came at a coffee shop. I ordered my drink and the barista said, "You from California?" I almost laughed out loud. Me? California? I'd never even been to the US. But in that moment, I felt like my hard work had paid off. It wasn't about fooling anyone. It was about being clear, being understood, feeling heard. And that feeling, that was priceless. Of course, there were times I fell back into my old accent, especially when I was tired or nervous. But instead of getting discouraged, I reminded myself, this is a journey. Just like babies stumble when they first walk, I was allowed to stumble too. As long as I kept moving, listening was my foundation. Speaking was my expression. Together, they were shaping the new me. Some days I felt stuck. I sounded fake. I questioned myself. Why am I doing this? Those words, whispered in frustration late at night, felt heavy. I would replay a voice recording of myself reading a simple dialogue in an American accent, and cringe so hard I'd want to delete it instantly. It didn't sound right. Not natural. Not native. Just wrong. That's when doubt would creep in. Was I pushing too hard? Was I wasting my time? Was it even possible for someone like me, born far from the US, speaking another language since birth, to actually sound American? The honest truth? I didn't know. But I had made a promise to myself. Don't stop. I told myself I was allowed to feel frustrated, but not allowed to give up. On those tough days, I leaned on something strange, yet powerful. My mirror. It sounds silly, I know. But trust me. My mirror became my best friend, my stage, my coach, and my audience all at once. I would stand in front of it every single morning, no matter how I felt. With tired eyes, messy hair, and a voice not yet warmed up, I'd face my reflection and speak. Not whisper, speak. I picked simple dialogues from movies or TV shows and acted them out. I mimicked the facial expressions of American speakers, the way they moved their mouths, their confidence. It was more than pronunciation. It was performance. It was becoming. Sometimes I would spend 20 minutes on just one sentence, saying it over and over until it flowed naturally. Other times, I'd go full drama mode and act out an entire scene, pretending I was on Grey's Anatomy or Friends. I laughed at myself often, but I was learning, and that was all that mattered. One of the most powerful tools I discovered during this journey was something called shadowing. Shadowing changed everything. It's a technique where you listen to a native speaker and repeat after them immediately, trying to match their rhythm, stress, and intonation. At first, I felt like a parrot, a very bad parrot. But slowly, I realized something. I was not just repeating sounds. I was training my brain and tongue to work together in real time. I was reprogramming the way I spoke English. I started with short, simple sentences. Things like, "Hey, what's up? Can I get a coffee, please?" "No way, that's crazy." But I didn't stop there. I moved on to longer dialogues. I'd pause YouTube videos after each sentence and repeat the speaker's words, trying to sound just like them. I copied their speed, tone, and pauses. Sometimes I even imagined being them, like I was the speaker in a TED Talk or the host of a late-night show. And yes, I recorded everything. The first time I listened to myself on playback, I almost cried. Not because it was beautiful, but because it was awkward. I sounded stiff, like I was trying too hard. But I didn't delete it. I kept those recordings like journal entries. They were ugly, but they were mine. And they showed me something important. Progress is rarely pretty at the start. I made a habit of listening to these recordings before bed. I'd take mental notes. Okay, I stressed the wrong word there. My R sounds too sharp. I need to connect those words more smoothly. It became a nightly ritual, almost like checking in with my future self. One time, after 3 weeks of intense practice, I played an old recording and compared it to a new one. I almost didn't recognize the voice. The changes were small, but they were real. My T sounds were crisper. My R sounds had softened. My tone had a natural melody. And most of all, I sounded confident. Confidence. Now that was something I hadn't had in a while. This transformation wasn't just in my speech, it was in my body language, my posture, my eyes when I looked into the mirror. I no longer avoided my own reflection. I started owning it. Some days, I didn't feel like practicing. I had long shifts at work or personal stuff weighing on me. But I'd still show up to that mirror, even if just for 5 minutes. I'd whisper, "You've got this," and rehearse a few lines. That small act of showing up, even when I didn't feel ready, made me stronger. Then came the day I walked into a cafe and ordered coffee in my best American accent. "Hi, can I get a medium iced vanilla latte, please?" The barista smiled, nodded, and repeated the order without asking me to say it again. My heart swelled. They understood me, the first time. No puzzled looks, no tilted heads. I walked out of that cafe with my latte in hand and a fire in my chest. The mirror had worked. The shadowing had paid off. The voice I used that day, it didn't feel fake. It felt earned, real, mine. But I wasn't just building an accent. I was building trust in myself. This journey taught me that the voice we want doesn't come from outside. It's already inside us. It just needs training, love, and daily care. Like watering a plant or learning to play a song, it takes time. But the growth is beautiful. I remember one late night, practicing a scene from a movie in front of the mirror. I was tired, but as I spoke the lines, I caught a glimpse of my reflection. For the first time, I saw someone who wasn't afraid anymore. Someone who had been through the struggle, but didn't give up. Someone who found power in persistence. That moment led to something even more important than speaking in an American accent. It led to being heard. It was a regular Tuesday morning. I had just made coffee, my notebook was open, and I was prepping for a Zoom meeting with a team of American colleagues. The usual thoughts ran through my mind. Will they understand me today? Will my accent confuse them? Will I need to repeat myself? These thoughts had followed me for months, like shadows that wouldn't go away. Even after weeks of intense practice, the fear of not being understood still crept in every time I was about to speak. But something was different that day. As the meeting started, I found myself more relaxed than usual. I had done my vocal warm-ups, listened to a few lines from my favorite American TV show, and spoken a few sentences to my mirror just before joining. My voice felt ready, my mind was sharp, and my heart, though still pounding, felt brave. When it was my turn to speak, I took a deep breath and went for it. I explained a project I was working on, shared some challenges, and made a suggestion. And then, silence. Not because I had made a mistake. No. It was a thoughtful silence. People were actually listening to what I said. Then came the responses. All positive, all engaging. Someone even laughed at the little joke I had slipped in. And then it happened. One of my colleagues smiled and said, "Wow, you sound great. Where are you from in the US?" I froze for a second. Not because I was nervous, but because I was shocked. He thought I was American? It felt surreal. I had worked so hard for this moment, and now that it had arrived, it felt like a quiet kind of victory. Not the kind you scream about, but the kind that warms your chest and stays there forever. But here's the truth. That moment wasn't about sounding American. It wasn't about blending in or pretending to be someone else. It was about something far deeper. It was about being heard, fully, clearly, without interruptions or confusion. It was about my voice finally matching my thoughts. My English didn't feel like a performance anymore. It felt like a part of me. Let me take you a little deeper into this journey. For weeks, I had mimicked every word, every pause, every shift in tone of American speakers. I had become a silent shadow behind the voices of Rachel from Friends, Jake Peralta from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and even random YouTubers. I wasn't copying them to become them. I was borrowing their rhythm, their melody, their flow, to find mine. I used to stand in front of the mirror, practicing sentences like, "Can I grab a coffee?" or "You got this," over and over again. My neighbors probably thought I was talking to myself, which I was. But I didn't care. I was building muscle memory, not just in my tongue, but in my brain. I was creating a new version of me who spoke with clarity, energy, and confidence, and it worked. Back in that Zoom meeting, something else happened. Something subtle but life-changing. As I continued speaking, I saw how people leaned in a little. Their body language shifted. They weren't just hearing me. They were engaging with me. They were no longer focused on decoding my words. They were listening to my ideas. My message had finally broken through the barrier of sound. Do you know what that felt like? It felt like freedom. It felt like walking into a room where everyone turns to listen, not because of how you sound, but because of what you say. It felt like becoming visible after years of hiding behind syllables that didn't land quite right. It was more than fluency. It was connection. That day changed something inside me. I realized that learning an accent is not about losing your identity. It's not about sounding like someone else. It's about owning your voice and sharpening it so that it carries your message in the clearest, strongest way possible. It's about control, expression, and pride. From that day forward, I stopped seeing accent practice as a burden. It became my superpower. I enjoyed the learning. I embraced the tweaks, the subtle changes in intonation, the softening of certain sounds. I wasn't forcing anything. I was unlocking something that was always there, a voice that was mine, just waiting to be tuned. In fact, I started to notice something else. When I spoke English with intention, people didn't just hear the accent. They heard me, my humor, my curiosity, my passion, my ideas, my story. Because now, I was no longer afraid of the sound of my voice. I had trained it. I had trusted it, and I had taken the time to know it. The result? I wasn't just speaking better English. I was speaking with impact. The best part? I didn't lose my roots. I still speak my native language with love. I still carry my culture proudly. But now I also carry a second voice, an American accented voice that helps me move through the world with more confidence, more ease, and more joy. I no longer apologize for how I sound. I celebrate it. That Zoom meeting was just the beginning. Since then, I've given presentations, recorded podcasts, and even helped others improve their English fluency. Not because I'm perfect, but because I understand the journey. I've lived it. I've felt the embarrassment. I've fought the self-doubt. And I've stood on the other side of it all, smiling. Because I found my voice. Learning to speak with an American accent didn't mean pretending to be someone else. That was never the goal. I didn't want to erase where I came from. I didn't want to wear someone else's voice. What I really wanted, what I deeply needed, was to feel like I had control over how I expressed myself. I wanted to choose how the world heard me. And that's what learning the American accent gave me. Not a fake voice, but a choice. A confident, trained, practiced voice that I could trust. This journey didn't start from a place of shame. It started from a dream. I grew up listening to American movies, podcasts, music. Something about the sound, the rhythm, the tone, the flow, felt powerful, almost magical. It wasn't just the accent. It was the energy behind the way Americans spoke. Fast, casual, strong, expressive. I wanted that energy. I wanted that confidence. But here's the truth. In the beginning, I didn't have it. I had hesitation. I had fear. And I had a voice that didn't match how I felt inside. I had great thoughts and exciting stories, but my mouth couldn't carry them in the way I wanted. Sometimes I would hear myself speak and feel disappointed, not because I hated my accent, but because I felt misunderstood. Like there was a wall between what I meant and what people heard, and then one day I said enough. No more waiting, no more whispering words under my breath, no more telling myself, I can't. I started to train, not because I wanted to sound like someone else, but because I wanted to sound like me, with clarity and pride. Let me tell you something real. There is no magic trick to sounding fluent or confident. You don't fake it. You train it. You wake up every day and you show up for your voice. You listen, you repeat, you laugh at your mistakes. You cry a little when it feels hard. You mess up 100 times, and then one day, something beautiful happens. You say a sentence, and it just flows. You feel it, you hear it, and you smile because you know this isn't fake. This is earned. Training my voice was like training a muscle. I couldn't lift heavy words on day one. I had to start small. One phrase, one sentence, one line, from a movie. But I repeated that sentence until I owned it. And then I moved to the next one. The progress wasn't fast, but it was steady. I didn't compare myself to others. I stayed in my lane. This wasn't a race. It was a relationship between me and my voice. Some people think accents are about sounding cool. For me, it was about sounding clear. I wanted to be understood. I wanted to tell stories without holding back. And the more I trained, the more I realized that I didn't just want to sound like an American, I wanted to sound natural, authentic, fluent, alive. There were moments, I won't lie, when I felt discouraged. Days when my mouth couldn't follow my mind, when I'd practice the same word 10 times and still get it wrong. But you know what got me through those days? The belief that every single repetition was building something. Every awkward sentence was shaping my voice. I told myself, this is not failure, this is growth in action. And slowly, I started noticing changes. I didn't just speak differently, I carried myself differently. I spoke with more boldness, more rhythm, more color in my words. People started responding to me differently. They listened more. They understood me faster. And most importantly, I stopped apologizing for how I sounded. Because now I sounded like someone who worked for it. Let me make this clear. You don't need to erase your identity to speak in an American accent. You can be fully you while shaping your sound. Accent is not about losing your roots. It's about growing your reach. It's about honoring where you come from while expanding into where you want to go. There's a beauty in being bilingual, or even just trying. The effort you make to shape your voice, to speak in a way that connects, that resonates, that travels, is not something small. It's powerful. It means you care about connection. And that matters more than perfection. I've learned that accent training isn't just about speaking English. It's about speaking your truth, louder, bolder, and without fear. It's about creating space for your voice in the world. And once I understood that, everything changed. The American accent stopped being a skill and became a gift I gave myself. Now when I speak, I feel free. Not because I sound native, but because I sound sure. I own every word. I feel the strength in my tone. I don't rush. I don't hide. I don't shrink. I speak like I believe I belong, because I do. So what do I carry with me from this journey? What did I really learn? I learned that confidence doesn't start when you're fluent. It starts when you decide to show up, even when you're nervous, even when your words shake. I learned that imitation is not the enemy of authenticity. It's the beginning of learning. I learned that listening is just as important as speaking. And I learned that your voice is not something to fear. It's something to train. I want you, the one watching this, to know. If you have a dream to speak clearly, fluently in an American accent or any accent, it is possible. Not by faking it. but by showing up every single day with heart. You can do it. You can grow. You can change the way the world hears you, simply by choosing not to give up. This journey has taught me to love my voice, to treat it like a friend, to be patient with it, to be proud of it. I didn't just learn to speak in an American accent. Learn to speak with pride. I learned to speak as me. And now, I pass this story to you, not as a lesson, but as a light. If I can do it, you can too. If my voice can grow, yours can soar. Your voice is not broken. It's just waiting to be trained. If this story gave you hope or motivation, hit that like button. Subscribe to The Tone English for more real stories that teach you how to speak English with confidence, heart, and fun. In the comments below, tell me, what's one thing about your English voice you want to improve? And hey, share this with a friend who's dreaming of speaking fluently. Let's grow together.